Hi guys, I'm Danny, and I started a Sunday gym because I've noticed lately that people tend to go to colleges and universities without actually knowing why they're there. And afterwards, starting jobs that are unfulfilling. So I'm interviewing different professionals to see what they have to say and share their knowledge and experience with you. I hope you enjoy it. Right on, Richard. Thank you for being with me. How are you doing today?
I'm very good, thank you.
Glad to hear. Could you please speak a little bit louder for me? And the program will be focused on three main aspects. What do you do for a living? How did you get there? And how did you knew that this was the way to go? So tell us what you do for a living.
Right now, what I do for a living is retired, which is which is everybody's goal, I guess. Um, yeah, for years I was a clinical laboratory director, and in hospital laboratories and reference laboratories and various places around the Bay Area in California, which is near San Francisco. So, how I got started, I suppose we all fall into our careers somewhat by accident, but I have to say, um,
Well, in no fairness, there is absolute personal opinion, of course, but you cannot be involved in the medical field by accident, simply by you really there have to be something in you. Like I'm from my mother's line, right? I'm the only person in this family that isn't a doctor. If I if I wanted to, we already had the connections and everything. I really didn't want it to do anything with medicine. So that's not a kind of job you can just fall on the stairs and drop in a hospital and they're like, okay, so the new director is here. I don't.
absolutely. So I guess that brings up another thing. You have to follow your passion. And if you're directed in a direction by somebody else and it is not your passion, you won't succeed or you won't stick with it. So I agree with you there. So it seems that nobody that I know goes directly into their career. They kind of explore around. So when I started college, I actually began as a history major
Really?
because I was interested in history, and I still am. So one semester I took a science class that really inspired me. It was zoology. It really caught my attention. And so I switched majors to biology, then eventually to microbiology with a minor in biochemistry. It wasn't easy. It wasn't an easy transition because science is a lot different. It's a lot
Yeah.
different from history, from just remembering things and understanding how world events happen. Science is a whole different discipline. So I have to say, I probably struggled at first. And it wasn't until I became an upperclassman in my university that I started focusing on my major courses and really got very involved in that. But I didn't know what I wanted to do with it. You know, there's one thing. There's a college course, there's your interest, and then when you're coming out the other end, what kind of a job, what kind of a career are you going to have? And frankly, I didn't even think about that. I just loved what I was studying. So somewhere along the line, somebody mentioned, well, you could work in a hospital laboratory. When you graduate, you do a 1 year internship, and then you can work in the laboratory.
Can you go a little bit louder for me or adjust the microphone or something? Because I'm losing you a little bit.
So
Yeah, perfect.
okay, so I did that, and but that was kind of a last minute decision. And but these decisions
Those are often the best ones.
exactly. So if you know yourself, if you know what you're excited about, then when the opportunity comes, you're ready to make the decision. And that's what happened in that case. And then I went on to graduate school and became a director. So I did that for 40 some odd years. And when I reached retirement age, I had a dream to travel. We did a little bit but while you're working, it's difficult to spend much time doing that, especially in the United States. We get like 2 or 3 weeks a year, 4 weeks if you have seniority. I know in Europe, a lot of people get couple months, or they
Well, a
get.
couple of months is strong, but we often have, like, for about 9 months of the year, we have like 3 or 4 holidays within them. And averagely we have about 20 days per year, but sometimes it's more. So we actually connect with those holidays within here and there, and that's how we get
Yeah,
on
well,
vacations.
that's similar. So I did want to travel, and we did that for, well, until COVID, until 2020. We came back from a trip to Australia. We came back to San Francisco on March 6th, I believe, and immediately went into lockdown. so so at that point, I decided to write a book that had been in the back of my mind. So with my science background and with some research, I wrote a book on. I just won an award on science and cosmology. So the title of the book is "The Evolution of Man." The evolution of life, Big Bang to space colonies. I can't even remember the title.
Well, no worries, it will be in the description below, so don't worry about it.
So in fact, it just recently won an award, so I was really pleased with that. And I'm ready to publish my second book, which is a novel, a science fiction novel. So I was able to, in retirement, I was able to use my cumulative knowledge over the years, with some research and updating and all of that, to do something that I dreamed about but never had time to get into while I was working. So a career can last into your retirement, and it does for many people, if you're in a profession. If you work on the streets laying pavement, you're gonna you're gonna burn out at a very young age because it's very physical.
Yeah.
So I would encourage everyone to follow their passion, but also that passion should lead them into some sort of education where they have a skill that can continue and be developed throughout their life.
I agree with you 100%. And you already covered brilliantly, like perfectly, the third question. How did you knew that this was the way to go? And you said that you already knew yourself. So when you know yourself, it's rather easy to be focused at a specific aim that you're aimed at. But
Exactly.
and I'm not sure about the US, but at least in Europe, this is a little bit of an issue, because people have this stigma that you should go to college to get a degree to secure your future, which is simply not true. And I'm not against colleges or universities or any of this. I graduated college. I graduated the Aalborg University in Denmark. I'm about to start a PhD in this September. So clearly, I don't have an issue with those institutions. But I'm highlighting the fact that often people tend to go over there because of this mentality. They're graduating something that clearly isn't for them. And I'm not insulting anyone. I'm just highlighting what's going on. And afterwards, they start jobs that are, again, not for them, but they already have the background. And they do, but it's not for them. And it's, you can see that often those folks are miserable, because you cannot be doing something that you hate or don't like for about nine hours a day and have a good life. It doesn't work like that. I know people from IT sector, and they really don't like their jobs, but in the end of the month, when they see the paycheck, it's, you can see it. It's there. But those are isolated cases, and they don't stick around for that long. But many others are like that. And when the parents are telling you that you should go to college, and of course they mean well. I remember my father told me about his father, my grandfather. He died before I was born, and my grandfather told my father to learn how to fix TVs, right? Because everybody has a TV in the home. So if you know how to fix one, you always have a job. And I'm 32 years old now, and I've never seen anyone fixing a TV. If it doesn't work, you throw it away, you get a new one, and you repeat the cycle every 8 or 10 years, and that's it. So obviously, the world that we're preparing our children for doesn't exist anymore, because by the time they're adults, things are changing. It's been quite dynamic ever since the Industrial Revolution started, which is like about 2 centuries now. So I've noticed that, and I do consider it an issue, not because, for example, the universities here aren't really that expensive. We have a few expensive universities in Europe, but most of them are pretty cheap. Like my PhD will be for about $500 per year,
Wow.
which is great actually. Uh, but it's about losing time, because if you, and that's why I really love that answer, because if you don't know yourself, you will start going on a path that clearly isn't for you, and you lose a lot of time. And what do we have now? We have about 23, 24, 25-year-old young men and women who are doing stuff that they don't want to do, clearly, but they can't shake it off. And if you happen to have any advice for those people, I'd really love to hear it.
Yeah. Well, I agree with you. If you're forced into, the round peg into the square hole, it's not gonna last. It's not gonna endure. And I
Can
know,
you go a little bit louder for me, please?
yeah, if you can't be a round peg forced into a square hole,
Yeah.
it's not gonna work. So you have to. Uh, and I'm not encouraging or saying that everybody is a candidate for college. That's exactly not right. But your goal should be lifelong discovery and learning, and whatever venue and whatever means something to you. Um, so I do remember a story of a girl who grew up in the swamps of Florida in United States, and she was uneducated. She was abandoned by her mother died. She was abandoned by her father, and she lived in this shack in the Everglades. And and she became interested in drawing and painting pictures of plants. And she started. She taught her. She met a friend who was a biologist who taught her to read, and showed her and gave her some books to study on botany, and she became a famous artist, painting making botanical prints, and actually made a fair amount of money and paid off the debt on the house she lived in, and became a very functional part of society, even though she was isolated. Well, she followed her passion, and fortunately, that was probably the only option she had from where she was located. So she never went to college, but she never stopped learning and developing.
No, even Pablo Picasso said that learning is a never-ending process. You can't just have a degree and stop learning, because simply life doesn't work like that. I don't know anyone who hasn't learned anything after they graduated, and mostly because I don't surround myself with such people. But even if I did, like, you can't just. It's way too dynamic. You're basically, I wouldn't say forced to learn new things every day, because you just don't consider it learning. There was this example I gave some months ago, and when I started working for, it was a company I was working at, and we're doing like procedures, like how the process has been structured, right? Because if you're not here, somebody's backuping you, so they can check your work, how you do it. And I did it, like in the first month when I went there. And when I had to leave, my supervisor said, make sure your procedure is up and running. And I said, yeah, everything is fine. And I said, when did you do it? I said, well, about 2 years ago. Are you crazy? We said, because I didn't open it for 2 years. I just wrote it and put it aside. And when I opened it, it had nothing to do with what was before. The interface was different. The methodology was everything was different. Even the way you entered the system was different. And I, oh, okay, no, so yeah, you have to. It's inevitable. You gotta learn new things. And I really love that story you said about this girl. Or you told me about this girl, because really highlights that. Of course, it's a tragedy. Mother died and her father left her. But maybe if she wasn't in that swamp and around those plants and green and everything, maybe her life wouldn't be like that. And it's pretty remarkable.
That's exactly right. So where we find ourselves is pretty much an accident, from birth on. Where we find ourselves is just a matter of chance. You were born in Bulgaria?
Yeah.
I was born here in California. Well, that in itself will put you on a certain trajectory, which is becoming less cast in concrete today because we have more options than our ancestors did. Like my son, who worked in San Francisco and was laid off from his job and the economic cycle, and found a similar job in Bangkok, and works for a company. He's a web designer, so he'll be leading a team that is largely based in Chicago. Go figure. But the
From
headquarters,
California to Thailand to manage a team in Chicago. That's pretty solid triangle.
I know, but the headquarters of the company is in Bangkok, so I guess that's why they want him there. But
yeah, I suppose so.
So
I really, somebody asked me, I don't even remember when, if you had to choose a specific time period to live in, when will it be? And I like, definitely now, because fairness, like you can say like 200 or 300 years ago, if your father was a blacksmith, you'd be a blacksmith.
exactly.
Most of the time. Of course, there are examples here and there, but most of the time you'd be doing what your father was doing. That didn't go anywhere around that. And it's really perfect. It's not perfect, but it's way better in almost every way, because the opportunities are endless, literally. And there are a lot of companies, new companies and already established companies, are really looking for people. In today's world, if you don't have a job, you don't want a job. That's really my opinion and my view, because the opportunities are endless. I was talking to this remarkable young lady a while ago, and she told me that when she started, she's working for a German company, and when she started, she didn't know anything about it, but she wanted to learn. Now, they were so happy with her that 3 years later, her boss went to her and said, you're not going to work for 8 hours, you're going to work for 7 hours. And for the next 6 months, we will be teaching you about different aspects of the company, because I think you'd be more suited elsewhere. So it's amazing how many opportunities are coming, and most of them are, frankly, not expected.
No, you train for a job today that doesn't exist when you're ready for it.
Yeah.
But when you're speaking of now's a good time to live, I agree with you. When we look back at history and how even our grandparents lived and our parents, my choice would be to live now or sometime in the future. So
now, if I have to go in time, I would rather go in time in Egypt, but not for the pyramids or for the things, because I don't really, yeah, they're interesting, but I already played Assassin's Creed Origins, so I have a general idea. No, not for that. I want to try the wine, because it's impossible to see 5 stars up in the sky and think about a hippo. It's gotta be the wine. I've seen a hippo once in my lifetime. It was in a museum. It's been dead for 40 years, and I was still afraid. There's no way you can see a hippo and consider it to be the 5 stars in this. And I have a friend of mine, he's an astronomer, and he said, well, Danny, back then the sky was clear and the stars were there. It's a hippo. There's no way you can look up there and see a hippo at those 5 stars. Those animals are scary, so it's got to be the wine. And this
Right.
is why I'd like to go, but only for the wine, for like one night, maybe two.
Yeah, right.
With that said, Richard, do you happen to have an advice or a good example you can give about somebody knowing themselves, discovering themselves, and figure it out from there?
Well, I can speak from my own experience. First of all, I went to work out of high school. I went to college, but I worked part-time, and I had a number of different jobs, and some of them, most of them went full-time in the summer when I was on break. And uh, I found out pretty quickly I didn't want to work in a factory. I did.
Yep.
I didn't want to do repetitious, mind-numbing work and come home dead tired, and that was a motivation to okay, there's something better for me. This is not building my future. It's not developing my mind at all. In fact, it's just the opposite. And and you would meet people in that situation who had been working in that kind of semi-skilled labor area all of their lives. And I remember filling out an application to work for a company that built cans for like canned peaches and that stuff. They made the cans, called American Can Company. And I was filling out the application, and they asked for your job history. And I had one or two part-time jobs. That was it, real quick fill out. This man sitting next to me, who I considered to be an older guy, well, he was, but maybe 50. And he was filling out his application, and he had a string of maybe 20 or 30 jobs that he was listing. And he says, well, when you've been in the business this long, you have a long resume. He didn't use those words, of course. But I thought, my God, he's spent his whole life doing this thing, which I find absolutely almost intolerable. And how do you grow personally in a job like that? How do you develop your vision and your mind? How do you end up in old age with some wisdom, or do you just sink into dementia? So I think, and that's part of when I started writing a book, my my first book, the research and the focus to try and remember what I wrote the day before and so forth was a challenge. And then I found that over time, I began to think a little bit more like when I was younger. So our brains are plastic, so we got to use them the same way we use our bodies to keep them in shape. And so that's where the passion comes in. If you have the passion for what you do, and it involves even collecting hubcaps from cars and cataloging them and going out in the road and finding more beside the road and stuff. I had a grandfather who did that. He had his garage full of hubcaps on the wall, and he had them all cataloged as to what year and make a car and how many they produced and all of this stuff. To me, it was a simplistic thing to do, but it kept him active, kept his mind thinking about these things, and it was a passion. It was something fun for him to do. So, more power to him.
Absolutely agree. And I love it when you highlighted that the mind really has to move. And when we, just like we exercise the body, we have to exercise the mind. Fairness, if somebody's working for 30 years in the same position, even in different companies, but in the same position, then you don't have 30 years of experience. You have 1 year of experience repeated 30 times, because
30 times.
we're simply not made as species, my personal opinion, of course, to do the same thing over and over again. Even back then, during the Renaissance, or even before that, even when you're a field worker and you're plowing the field, and even then there were innovations here and there, not daily, but people moved forward. This is how society was thriving. So being at the same place over and over again it's a comfort zone. So I can understand that. And I think the comfort zone is actually a pretty good big enemy.
Yeah, I'll agree. And just to go back to evolution, if we look at nomadic cavemen, around the time of the Neanderthals 30, 40,000 years ago, and before that, humans followed the game. They hunted, they followed the game. They learned about what plants, what roots, what fruits were edible. They learned the patterns of grazing animals and predators. They knew what seasons and where they migrated to, and they had a different environment every day because they were nomadic. They invented all of their support housing, all of their needs that could travel with them. So they had a challenging environment. There were predators out there that they had to be wary of, and so there was a lot of stimulus from the environment, and we've insulated ourselves from a lot of that. So take the factory worker. He goes inside the building and he comes out at the end of the day. He goes in the morning, it's dark. In the winter, he comes out when it's dark again. So he doesn't experience nature as we evolved in it, and most of us don't unless we take the time, to do that. So that's a limitation that we did not evolve to live in, and it's limiting. It will limit our lives if that's what we do.
Absolutely. I've been like that ever since I was 17. I went to college at 17. Like you are back then, it was almost mandatory for everyone who studied economics. It wasn't a written rule, but it was mandatory for all of us to work, because the professors were like, well, why are you studying economic specialty? And if you don't know anything about work, so it doesn't make any sense. So I was working as a bartender, and everybody was working. So ever since that age, I've never really relied only on one job. I'm always trying to do something else. Most of the time, I'm pretty bad at it, but every now and then I actually nail it, and the feeling is pretty good.
Yeah, and that's well, you said something about the comfort zone, and that's what we have to fight against, the fear of something new, something different, something we don't fully understand or that we're not competent at, then we think we're going to fail. So I think that holds a lot of people back, and I would say if I had this life to do over, I would take more risks. I would try more things than I did. And I did try different things. And each time it terrified me.
Yeah.
Each time you started, you go like, God, can I do this? And yes, I could. So now, now I don't have that fear. If I tried something new, hey, if I fail, what is it? I'll try, I'll learn something. And that's the important thing. You learn something about yourself.
100%. With that said, Richard, thank you for being with me. That was an awesome discussion. Please send me all of the links and everything about social media so I can put it down there.
Thank you. It's been fun.
Right on. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Guys, I hope this one was useful. Please follow the channel on YouTube, Rumble, Twitter, Gap, LinkedIn, and Facebook. Ring the bell and all the good stuff. Have a nice week ahead, and I'll see you next Sunday.